All right, welcome into Los Angeles, California, and a new look writer's block from the West Coast here on CBS Sports HQ, your home for streaming sports. We are going to dive into tonight's NCAA Championship game. Reid Forgave is going to join from Minneapolis. We've got an animation of my worst moment, maybe of my career, which happened at a Final Four, and much more starting right now.
Shot from the corner goes. So here we go. Jerome to inbound. It's Guy from the corner. From the wing. Hold on. Hold on. Did I hear a whistle? Wow. For the lead. And Virginia is heading to its first ever national championship game appearance. Stepping up big time. They're celebrating in the streets of Lubbock. Wow. Because Texas Tech will be playing for the national championship.
All right, you saw it. I'm pumped. You're pumped. We're excited. Tonight, there will be one left. It feels like Game of Thrones, which starts in a week. We started with so many teams. Two remain. Virginia, the number 1 seed, and a Texas Tech team that's one of the better defensive teams we've seen in the modern era. And I'll say this. I have a terribly busted bracket. I won't pretend it looks good, but I do have Virginia circled all the way. How do we get here? Particularly, let's start with Texas Tech. This is a team that at every step has been a dominating force defensively. Held Michigan State 51 points. Held the Zags, a top 3 offense, to 69 points. Brutalized and humiliated Michigan. Held them to 44 points on their road, on their route to perhaps one of the more surprising championships if they can get it done tonight. And Chris Beard, their head coach, who's a marvelously talented guy. In fact, we had him on the program here on Writer's Block just before the tournament began, isn't just embracing the doubters, he's thanking them.
You got to thank the haters, too. I think maybe Jordan in his Hall of Fame speech said that, you know, and I get great motivation for the people that tell us what we can and can't do. So, you know, just don't pick us again in this game. We'll see what happens.
I'm telling you, I have this theory that this Texas Tech team is the incarnation of a Bobby Knight basketball squad and philosophy if it was 2019. I mean Bobby Knight, the good years before he got a little angry. The anger, the angst, the motivation. I like Chris Beard, but he's going to take all those doubters, real and imagined. There were some real ones, and he has turned it. Not will turn, not could turn it. He has turned it into a catalyst for this group who play ridiculous defense. They figured out the hard way that you got to do it the hard way. That's part of the deal with a Chris Beard culture. They're going to run you in practice. They're going to work you. It's emotionally difficult, and it builds a team. For Virginia, they've gotten here, and we know the redemption story. We love it. We'll get to it in a second. By a series of close calls. Somewhere out there, Purdue fans still feeling like they had just closed the deal. And the win against Auburn happened controversially. You can see it here. Kyle Guy, also friend of the show, had him on the program just before the tournament, takes that three-point shot to win it all. The clock is counting down to victory or to failure. And I know it's a bit of a shady call. I don't mind it. Kyle Guy goes to the line, ice in his veins. He hits 1, he hits 2, he hits 3. And now Virginia is here, and they're getting it done. And I love this Virginia storyline. I love this idea. I'm a big believer that failure, not success, failure is the thing that sends people to great heights and the greatest heights and the all-time greats. Michael Jordan kind of pretended he got cut from his varsity team, but it motivated him. LeBron James, who's regressed, was at his best after he failed against that Heat team. Tom Brady took being suspended for 4 games in Deflategate and turned it into a series, a couple Super Bowls, and an MVP at the age of 40. Virginia's done the same thing. Kyle Guy and the rest of the squad has embraced the reality that they were an embarrassment in the eyes of other people last year, and they've turned it into their own fuel, their own chip on their shoulder. And their head coach, Tony Bennett, talk about going from the lowest low last year to potentially the highest high tonight, talked about what it means to be here.
I think it helped us as coaches. I think it helped the players on the court, and then helped us in the other areas that, you know, rely on things that were significant. I knew it was going to be a significant year in all of our lives. I knew that going into this year because of what was going to be coming at us because of that from a basketball standpoint. So I just knew we needed each other.
This is an armchair psychology. This is a real thing. I mean, you're talking about a Virginia squad that in the first half of their opening round game against another random 16 seed did not play well. It looked like they might get upset again. There was that nervousness just watching the game. And since then, they figured it out. They've had a series of close games. And how do you win close basketball games? How do you deal with that pressure? How do you harness the moment that Kyle Guy found himself in where you have to hit 3 shots to win it? Right call, wrong call, whatever it is. You've gone through that failure and you've realized that it didn't defeat you, not in the long run. It didn't alter you, that you're tough enough to get up and to take it. There's a little bit less fear that next time. I also want to throw this storyline in because I think it's really interesting. I hit it on a little bit. Chris Beard, when we look back in 15 or 20 years, talking to people around the sport, and this was even before they made this Final Four run, more in the Sweet 16, when I was reaching out to sources and some coaches out there. This guy is incredibly well respected. The defensive effort that his team puts in is a reflection absolutely of coaching. He's obviously in this championship game, and the accolades are starting to pile up. He's got some ridiculous mentors, Bob Knight, first and foremost among them. Keep an eye if Chris Beard and Texas Tech can get it done tonight on the rise of his legacy and his standing, and whether or not he makes that jump and gets some big job, or he tries to stick around, stay in Texas Tech, and do what we've seen at Duke or the Zags with Gonzaga and build his own basketball empire at Texas Tech. It would be a very, very cool storyline. I want to take Virginia here. I want to look at you here on Writer's Block and tell you that I think that the Cavaliers are going to get it done because I took them all the way, but I don't. I think it's Texas Tech tonight. I like the fact they're underdogs. I've got them on the money line. I think it's going to be a Chris Beard celebration. You call it ugly, I call it defense. I think Texas Tech gets it done tonight in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's my take. Reid Forgave covers the NBA and college hoops. He's been doing college hoops and the NBA for years. We'll get his perspective. We'll get his prediction. He also caught up with Shaq and Charles Barkley. Did some really interesting things on the NBA for Reid. So we'll visit with Reid about all of those things when we come back to the program. Writer's Block here on CBS Sports HQ. From now, if you can see, Los Angeles, California in just a minute. All right, welcome back into Los Angeles, California. Bill Reiter with you here on Writer's Block, CBS Sports HQ. Going to go now live to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Reid Forgave, my colleague, covers the NBA and college hoops basketball at all levels. Reid, thanks for making time, buddy.
Absolutely, man. It's cool having the Final Four in my hometown, although it does mean I got to get to sleep early, and there has not been nearly as much drinking as there usually is during a Final Four. Probably a good thing on the whole.
Reid Forgave starting the interview with a lie. If I know Reid Forgave. All right, we just talked a lot of college hoops. We're gonna hit a lot of college hoops, Reid. But let's do a little NBA here. You are one of the voters this year for the MVP, for the Defensive Player of the Year, for all of the big awards in the NBA. And you sat down with Shaq and Charles Barkley the other day for a wide-ranging conversation. And as a part of that, well, listen here. Chuck gave you this advice about who you should vote for this year for the MVP.
If you vote for James, I have no problem with that. But the criteria that they used, if I had a vote, I always reward guys who are winning. Before the season started, nobody expected the Milwaukee Bucks to have the best record in the entire NBA. Nobody expected that. So you have to reward that man for having the best record in the NBA.
All right, Forgrave, so you heard his advice. All right, Reid, so you heard his advice last week. Last week, I told you it's got to be honest. You said it was Harden. It's one thing me giving you advice. It's another thing Charles Barkley. Where are you at right now with your vote?
All right, so check it out, man. You've been haranguing me for weeks about this. And what I've said, to be fair, is I'm waiting until Friday. That's when my vote's due. And I have been absolutely split. And you heard what Charles said there. He said this is going to be the closest vote, MVP vote in history, even closer than when Chuck won it. And that was the closest vote that we've ever had. So I've been torn, man. I've been absolutely torn. And my argument has been for Harden, and I've been leaning Harden, not all in the tank for Harden, but it's been Giannis has been incredible. He's been the best player for the best team. But what Harden has done is historic. I've been diving into the numbers, and you can certainly make an argument that Giannis is also doing something historic, as you've made the argument to me that that Giannis is potentially Defensive Player of the Year, or at least certainly in the top 3, and James Harden, not exactly a defensive stalwart. And then I get to ask my childhood hero, grew up in Philly and in Pittsburgh, Charles Barkley, and he tells me the same thing that you told me. Bill Reiter, I'm now leaning Harden. I'm now leaning Giannis. I'm leaning Giannis. Charles, plus you, I'll admit it, plus a little bit of stat hounding, has shifted my vote, but I do think it is an absolute toss-up.
Reid Forgave back on the side of righteousness and truth in the MVP voting. There's almost no wrong answer. Reid, you also, as part of that conversation, got into a topic that's certainly big news here in Los Angeles, the future of the Lakers in terms of leadership. Will Luke Walton be there? Is he the right fit? I was talking to a Lakers source today who thinks it's unfair, but that Luke won't be here. Shaq, also in your conversation with him, weighed in on the topic.
We're used to winning. We're used to having legendary coaches. Luka's okay, but we're gonna need somebody to bring us back to championship glory. I don't know if Luke's that guy. I don't know if Tyrone Lue's that guy. I don't know who that guy is, but he definitely needs some other players around him.
All right, Reid, so I get it. I understand the conventional wisdom. I was also here in L.A. last time around, my first time here, when everyone said Mike D'Antoni, the game had passed him by. He's doing pretty special things in Houston. Do you agree with Shaq? Is Luke Walton not the right fit for the purple and gold?
Someone has to take the fall, right? Someone has to take the fall from this season. It's not going to be LeBron. It's not going to be Magic. It's not going to be all these dudes on one-year contracts who clearly shouldn't have been signed in the first place. It has to be Luke. And look, Shaq, he didn't go all the way to say Luke Walton needs to be fired, but you can read between the lines there. You can hear what he's saying. He's saying this place is a place for stars, and Luke Walton is not a coaching star. I was also asking, what would you do if you were Magic or Rob Pelinka this offseason? And he's like, I don't know, but something ain't right. L.A. is a place, the Los Angeles Lakers are a place where stars want to come. Stars need to come play around LeBron. So it does sound to me, if you read between all the lines and all the tea leaves and listen to these, the guy who has his statue outside of Staples Center, not exactly a vote of confidence. It sure sounds like Luke Walton ain't long for that job.
Yeah, you're right. Fair or not fair, Luke Walton not going to be the Lakers head coach after extant interviews at the end of the season in a short time. All right, Reid, let's hit some college hoops. I was just talking at the start of the show about these really interesting narratives. You've got the redemption narrative for Virginia coming off the brutal loss last year to a 16 seed. And on the flip side, you have this, and maybe I'm getting carried away, but maybe, Reid Forgave, we're seeing the beginning of another great coaching career in terms of it being celebrated at this level, what Chris Beard has done. He's been Big 12 Coach of the Year 2 years. He took Little Rock, Arkansas, which is not an easy task, to the NCAA tournament. He may win an NCAA championship tonight. Which narrative are you more interested in? What's the bigger storyline for you? Chris Beard and the doubters out there, or this Virginia team trying to do this ultimate comeback and turnaround?
To me, it has to be Virginia. I think Chris Beard's story is incredible. This dude was coaching semi-pro ball in Myrtle Beach 8 years ago. He's since coached Division III, Division II. Little Rock, as you mentioned, that's not a great job. He took him to the tournament, won a first-round game, and now he's made Texas Tech into like a basketball power as long as he stands there. That's incredible. But what Tony Bennett has done with this Virginia team, it's historic. It's a Disney movie. You can imagine the first scene of that movie is Kyle Guy last year. He's absolutely devastated that this team has lost to UMBC. What does he do then? He puts a picture of that on his phone. I was asking him about this the other day. And I'm like, Kyle, why do you have a picture of the UMBC loss, your lowest moment in basketball, on your phone? And what he said I thought was so instructive. He said, yeah, it's motivational, it's inspirational, but more importantly, he doesn't want to forget the bad moments in his life. He believes that the bad moments can lead to great moments. Look, Texas Tech is an incredible basketball story. It really is. Chris Beard's a genius. It might be the most unlikely program to win a national title ever. You can make that argument. What Tony Bennett and this Virginia team is doing, it's not just a basketball story. This is a human story. The way that he has been almost a therapist to this team over the past year to lead them through, the darkest patches of their basketball career, it's incredible.
All right, Reid. So, and I love the movie thing. Congratulations, Zac Efron. You can play Kyle Guy in the Disney film. Reid Forgave will executive produce. Let me give you these stat lines, Forgave. We just hit these. Texas Tech's defense in this tournament has held Michigan State to 51 points, the Zags to 69, Michigan to 44, Buffalo to 58, Western Kentucky 57. We know they're great historically defensively. It's the lowest over-under number we've seen in a generation in an NCAA championship game, floating in that 119, 120 range for total points scored. Is it going to be under or over? Are we going to see some offense or another ugly, grinded-out basketball game?
Man, take the under. This is like the high school basketball coach's favorite matchup. It's not the casual fan's favorite matchup, but for a high school coach who wants his guys to really focus on defense, to really play defense, he's going to say, guys, watch this game. Because Virginia and Texas Tech, they do it two completely different ways. Virginia, with that pack line defense, they really just don't allow good shots. They're one of the best three-point defenses in the country. Texas Tech, a much more aggressive defense. They're trying to get you to turn the ball over. They're getting up in your face. They're just a bunch of dogs out there. They're doing it in two completely different ways. And, Bill, I think there is a chance that this could be not just a low-scoring game, not just a game that hits the under, but a historically low-scoring game. I did a little bit of research this morning. Lowest scoring national title game in history. Of course, you remember this game, 1941, Wisconsin over Washington State, 39 to 34, total of 73 points. We're not going to get the under on 73, but what we might get, the second lowest in the shot clock era was back in 2014, UConn, Kentucky. That came up to a total of 114. UConn won that 60 to 54. Would not be surprised in the least if this hits the under on 114.
All right, Reid, my gut tells me Texas Tech, but I took Virginia at the start of the tournament to win the whole thing here on CBS Sports HQ. You tell me, you're in Minneapolis, you cover this sport every day, you know the coaches, you know the players. Who's going to be cutting down the nets tonight?
My gut tells me Texas Tech as well. I had them in my Final Four to begin this tournament. And why? Because I saw them play Duke at Madison Square Garden in person right before Christmas. And they didn't win that game, but they absolutely shut down the best player in college basketball and the best offense in college basketball in the Duke Blue Devils. I think the way this team is so knit together, the culture that they have, these guys who are so scrappy, such a bunch of overachievers, guys who've been under-recruited and who wear that proudly. It is, to me, one of the most overachieving teams that we've seen, and that's not meant to be a knock on them. If anything, that's meant to be a compliment on them. I'm just not sure if I've ever seen a team that plays as hard as Texas Tech. Now, let me put one little asterisk next to that. If Tariq Owens doesn't play tonight, completely changes the equation. Then you take Virginia.
All right, Reid Forgave, good stuff as always, buddy. Appreciate you. Enjoy the game tonight. All right, good stuff from Reid. Appreciate his insight. See, we both were able to sneak in a little humble brag, too. I have Virginia. I took Texas Tech. We're experts. We're trying. We're trying to get this stuff right for you, the fan. In a minute, we're going to go inside the numbers on some of the particulars of this tournament and tonight's game. We're also, with some animation, going to put together and show you one of the most humiliating moments I've ever had in my career. It happened after a championship game, an NCAA championship game, like what's going to happen tonight. We'll unveil that, unfortunately for me, when we return here to Writer's Block on CBS Sports HQ in just a couple minutes. All right, welcome in to Writer's Block here from Los Angeles, California. You can see there, we've been talking about both these teams. Texas Tech, Virginia. Only one will be national champions tonight when it's all said and done. And we're going to go inside the numbers on this game. We start with the number one because this will be Texas Tech and Virginia's first appearances in the national championship game in each program's history. It'll be the first national championship with two first-time participants since 1979 when Magic Johnson and Michigan State faced off against Larry Bird and Indiana State in a legendary game. How about number three? For the third time in history, a 1 and a 3 seed are meeting in this game. The past two times it has happened are last year's championship game when Dante DiVincenzo and 1 seed Villanova handed the 3 seed Michigan a loss, and in 1990 when 1 seed UNLV destroyed 3 seed Duke 103-73. And number three again, we'll do three twice. Texas Tech's defense has been the story of the tournament, and Chris Beard and co. have held 3 out of the 5 teams they faced in the tournament to their lowest point totals of the season. The 2 teams to not have their lowest point totals were Gonzaga and Northern Kentucky, and it was both of their second lowest totals of the season. Such an incredible, grinding, stifling defense. How about some Virginia here with number 4? As Virginia's redemption tour continues, they look to make the history books in another way. The Hoos look to become the 4th team in history to win the national championship after losing in the round of 64 the previous season. The 3 others, Duke in 2015, UCLA in 1995, and Indiana in 1987, all blue blood programs. How about 11.5? There are tons of prop bets for tonight's game, of course. I'm on a few. One prop for tonight is how large will the largest lead be by either team. That number is set at 11.5 points. Neither team in its past 2 games has had more than a 10-point margin with their opponent. Under the mortgage, everything. It's a lock. And maybe not the mortgage. Finally, 118. The total set for tonight's national championship is a whopping 118 points. Since it has been kept track since about 1991, it's the lowest total ever in a national championship game. The next closest total is from 2006, when that was set 10 points higher at 128 for UCLA and Florida. All right, before we sign off, we're going to do this from time to time. Great work by Ryan Landham, who works on the show and works for CBS Sports HQ. I went to a national championship game as a newspaper reporter way back when Kansas played Memphis and had a terrible moment, which led to John Calipari, staring at me like he wanted to take me behind the arena and just beat me senseless. This, unfortunately, from my memory, but I think it's funny, is that moment.
The time I humiliated John Calipari. At the 2008 NCAA Championship, Memphis versus Kansas, I was assigned the task of running after the game to the press conference to ask Cal a question. In college basketball, at the end of NCAA tournaments, you have to wait until the players have spoken in order to interview the coaches. I ran in late, turned to a reporter, and said the fateful words, "Are you allowed to ask the coaches questions yet?" He said, "What? Are you allowed to ask the coaches questions yet?" He said, "Yes." My hand shot up, and I asked John Calipari why he cost his team a championship by not fouling at the end of regulation. And then came the moderator's voice telling me it wasn't time to ask coaches questions. And so while players answered about their heartbreak, John Calipari stared at me for a full 5 minutes that felt like 50, his temple throbbing, his face red, his anger palpable, staring directly into my soul. As the text messages came from friends that said, "Nice job, genius," or "Man, you look stupid on ESPN right there," I realized I was going to have to ask the question when it was time. And when he finally got the microphone, grabbing it and saying, "I want to answer that question," and addressing me and saying some version of, "I made a mistake. I should have fouled. I'm heartbroken." But the way he said it and the words he used were really, "How dare you, you snot-nosed punk." And then, in the days and months ahead, the nightmares of Cal staring at my soul and thinking I will destroy you began to haunt me.
What can I say? It was bad. It was a bad moment. It was not one of my finer moments. But great work by Ryan Landham. Appreciate him. Great work by David Rothschild. He did the video at the very start of the show. Thank you to Reid Forgave. Thank you to the crew in Fort Lauderdale and in Stanford, and the folks here in Los Angeles helping us adjust to our new look. Hope you like it. It's good to be back on the West Coast. CBS Sports HQ has you covered the operation in Fort Lauderdale, Sportsline in 30 minutes, and of course tonight, your home for everything you need to know as the national championship game gets underway. Halftime, post-game here, CBS Sports HQ. I'm Bill Reiter. We'll see you tomorrow.